Good morning from Universal Orlando Resort. Today we're doing what is called the Unmasking the Horror Tour for Halloween Horror Nights. Basically it's like a behind the scenes lights on tour of some of the houses from Halloween Horror Nights. Unfortunately we can't film in any of the houses, but I am allowed to take photos, so we'll be putting in photo slideshows of what we see inside of the houses in this video. Stick around. Here we go. I like this. This is the first time I've seen these posters during the daylight hours. Well, I guess it's the first time that I've taken the time to actually look at these posters during daylight hours. We have to enter in back here by the Blue Man Group bathrooms. Like, this is the Blue Man Group theater back here. And these are just some offices. This is old Nick Studios, the old Nick bathrooms. But here we go. We're going into Halloween Horror Nights, Unmasking the Horror Tour. So here we are in the special meeting area here, just waiting for the tour to begin. It's like a little snack bar here for us. And they're also selling limited merchandise like some mugs and some t-shirts. So we are officially on the tour. I can't film anything backstage or in any of the houses, but I can film when we're walking around the park like this. So there will be kind of like videos interspersed throughout. Just walking through. Oh no, there goes Megatron. Bye Megatron. As we're walking up towards the Academy of Villains dance stage, it looks like they are starting to rebuild it. They were not on this stage last week, but as you guys can see, the stage is there and some platforms around the back have been added. Different levels and stuff like that. They probably won't be dancing on this stage tonight, but they will start dancing on it soon. Upon further investigation, this is a totally different stage than was here before. So this ought to be interesting. One of the facts that our tour guide gave us was that these pumpkins were all hand carved and there's over 400 of them in the trick-or-treat scare zone. Judging from the direction that we're headed next to Men in Black, I believe that we're gonna be going to Blum House first. Here we go. This is the entrance to Blum House, so we'll see. So the first thing that we come to is the facade of the Blum house, and the first thing that we see, you guys may recognize as like the splash screen that you see at the beginning of every Blumhouse movie. At night, the door has some light behind it that kind of glows and kind of beckons you forward. And the first room that we come to is from the movie Sinister, and you guys can see some of the props here from the movie, like Kentucky Blood, which was the book that he was writing. We found a few Easter eggs in here too. Some of these names might be familiar to you if you know about Halloween Horror Nights, like Jason Perry or TJ Manarino. Here are some of the movies that the kids were making in Sinister. You can kind of see some of the work that the main character from Sinister was doing. This was like his workspace where he was trying to write his next book, living in the house that these murders took place in. And of course, there were a couple of other movies featured in this house as well, like The Purge, which we couldn't actually show any of the Purge stuff. This is still Sinister. But jumping straight from Sinister into Insidious, and you can see this is where the red-faced demon hangs out and he'll jump out and scare you from there. And right across from him was this bookshelf full of all sorts of like marionettes and puppets, and there was a little snow globe in there. That was the Krampus house. So this guy right here is really interesting. So this dummy is the dummy Charlie McCarthy. And he was actually really famous because when there was no TV and there was only radio shows, people would listen to this dummy, Charlie McCarthy, and then during commercial breaks, they would change the channel and try to find something else. And they had one really famous commercial break where Charlie McCarthy's show went to commercial break and everybody changed the channel. And Orson Welles was reading War of the Worlds on one of the other channels, and there was a huge panic that ensued because everybody thought we really were being attacked by aliens.
But wait, I'm reading something right now that says, despite repeated assertions to the contrary, in the PBS and NPR programs, almost nobody was fooled by Wells' broadcast. So how did the story of panic listeners begin? Blame American newspapers.
Oh, jeez.
It was fake news all the way back then. The newspaper industry wanted to discredit radio as a source of news. So they were literally printing fake news so that people would not listen to the radio anymore. So more people would read the newspaper. Isn't that kind of nuts?
And then, of course, there is also the dummy from Dead Silence. And then some other like really weird looking puppets or marionettes. And then that was about all that we could show for Insidious. And so we leave you with some nice drawings of the red-faced demon. We're all done with Blumhouse. Now we're headed over towards either Scarecrow or probably most likely Hive. But we are headed towards the Scarecrow entrance. Who knows? We'll see. So we actually ended up heading towards Hive, and this is, I guess, kind of the facade of Hive. This is meant to look like a 1980s movie poster about a vampire movie. and that plays a part in the house. Basically, the story behind the Hive is there was a house that became abandoned and fell into disrepair, and then somebody bought it. It turned out that the somebody was a vampire, and they put it on the historic registry and tried to save the house. Even though it was all like dirty and decrepit and all this other stuff, they didn't really care about the house. They just wanted a lair or a hive for all of their vampire friends. And so you can see here some vampires sleeping in the walls, and there was just vampires all over the place, hanging from the ceiling, everywhere in this house. So this room was interesting. So this room housed all of the inedibles. So the vampires would go out and get victims for them to feed on, and then anything that wasn't an actual person that they could eat, like shoes, toys, and baby dolls, and art, and stuff like that, they would just pile it up in this room. So this room was just full of all kinds of interesting things. Like you can see all the shoes on the mantle here, and piles of toys from the kids that the vampires ate. And then, of course, all throughout the house, one of the things that Halloween Horror Nights likes to do is use static figures to try to fool the people coming through the house. So you'll see like hanging vampires or mannequins that look like vampires standing around corners, and that is to fool you so that they can scare you from the other side with an actual scare actor. And then on the way out of Hive, even though we didn't go into Scarecrow, we did get to go past Scarecrow and take some pictures of the facade. You can see all these corn stalks and this weird looking skeleton scarecrow with horns. He's pretty frightening. So we just got done with Hive. Fairly certain that that was the last house that we were doing back there. Heading up to the soundstage houses. So that means that we will either do Deadwater, Fallen, American Horror Story, The Shining, possibly maybe Saw. I don't know. We'll let you guys know as soon as we get there. It's kind of like a surprise. Walking past the Transformers meet and greet again, and Bumblebee is out. Now we head into some of the non-IP houses, some of the original idea houses. So the first one that we went into was called The Fallen, which is kind of like a fight between good and evil. And so you'll see a lot of really interesting looking Gothic style architecture and medieval almost looking things. And there was a lot, like I said before, of bodies and mannequins hanging up to kind of distract you so that they can get you from the other side. And there's a lot of really, really interesting stuff. This is one of the things that I really like about the original idea houses, is that they don't have any basis to go off of. So everything that we're looking at here came from a designer's head. They just thought it up, and this is what came out. This little area right here was interesting because it was a blacksmith. There's a blacksmith guy that comes out and, you know, tries to scare you. But as we rounded this corner, something that I didn't ever notice at night was this anvil hanging from the ceiling, which I thought was really interesting because that's one of the reasons that we really like taking the Unmasking the Horror tour, is because you get to see things that you wouldn't normally see at night. Also, I like how this mannequin looks like Mick Jagger. Two of the houses have these really big rounded rooms where it's very large and has a tall ceiling, and I think it's really impressive to walk into. This one was pretty interesting because there's a guy that stands up above you and tries to scare you from up high where this person is standing with their upstretched arms. Oh, there's the artist formerly known as Prince. But you have to walk around him, and he is always scaring you from above, and so there's no real escape from it, which I like. I think that that's a really fun scare. Here's a shot of one of my favorite types of scares at any event, and this is a bungee jump. So if you can see, there is a little platform in the back there that the scare actor will stand on, and he's attached to bungees so he can jump off of it and hit the little bit of grip tape there on the floor and jump towards you before being yanked back. And it really scares you because it comes at you so fast that you didn't even know that it was coming. And then one of the other scares that is from above in this house is a flying scare. So it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but there is a truss with a track on it right above our heads that has a scare actor that is hooked into a harness, and he can glide across that track above you and scare you from above. So this house has like a bunch of acrobatic scares. And the next house that we came into was Dead Waters, and this one I may have taken entirely too many photos of because it really amazed me. Like, they built a paddle wheeler right in the middle of a soundstage. Look at the size of this facade. This is the very first thing that you see when you walk into this house is a riverboat, a paddle wheeler riverboat, but pretty much full size. And so just walking in, even with the lights on, it was so amazing. I love it. It's so good. The very first thing that you have to do when you walk into this house is go down this slanted hallway. And if you look, you can see there's this exit sign here that kind of points the way for people that can't take the angled walkway. It's just a straight path so that you don't have to take the angled way, because the angled way is very difficult to walk on. And everywhere you look in this house, there is something to see, which is really amazing to think about, because you're going through this at night, you're getting scared, there's flashing lights, there's loud noises everywhere. And the designers and the people that put this house together put in so much effort to stuff that most people will not even notice. Like, take for instance right here, in this orange circle is an x-ray of a foot. I don't know why it's there, but nobody would ever notice that. But it's in there, and it does really add to the theming. And if you can see it all throughout all of the pictures that I'm taking throughout this maze, there's just really interesting things that I think really add to it. But at night, most people running through getting scared aren't going to see at all. Here's some more examples of those same sort of things, like this little shelf with all kinds of little trinkets inside of it, and the skeletons and the things hanging from the trees. It's just really amazing, the effort and the artistry that goes into these mazes. And this is one of the reasons that we love taking the Unmasking the Horror tours. Check out that guy in the hat in the background. He's one of the guys from a maze a few years ago called The Forsaken. You can see more of this stuff that we were talking about before. It's just little things that are just all over the place. Oh, look, there's Jason Voorhees' mom, kind of sitting right there in the center there. That's her head. And then I thought it was actually really funny too, is right next to her there's just a tongue. Somebody's cut out tongue is sitting on a shelf. This is the next large room with a circular layout, like we were talking about from The Fallen. And you can just see there are scare actors all around this one. There's not a central scare actor in this one, but there are scare actors everywhere throughout. And so after we got done in Dead Waters, we started to head over to American Horror Story. And this is one of the ones that was kind of interesting to go on the Unmasking the Horror tour, because we weren't allowed to take very many photos in this house. We were allowed to take a photo here of the very first facade that you see of Asylum. And they told us something really interesting. They said that anytime that there's a barbed wire fence in any maze in any Halloween Horror Nights, they always put a plastic bag on the top of it. Our tour guide couldn't tell us why, but he just said that that was a little interesting fact. And then the only other room in American Horror Story that we could take photos in was here. And this is a famous window from the second story of the house from Roanoke. And you can see the blood moon there, and then you can see some of the other little, like, they almost look like Blair Witch Project type things hanging from the ceiling. And that was it. That's all that we could take photos of in American Horror Story. And then we headed into The Shining, which the same sort of thing happened in The Shining, where we couldn't take very many photos. So here is the facade for The Shining, and that is the Overlook Maze. And you can see actually the maze map here is true to the movie. They worked with the people that produced the movie to get a movie accurate map of the maze. And then that was it. That was all of the photos that we could take of the facade. And the only other place we could take photos was inside of the famous bathroom scene. And you can see back there is the shower curtain. And during the night, there is a woman whose silhouette is backlit onto that. And then as soon as you get close to the shower curtain, she pulls it away and you can see that it's the really scary old lady. But that was it. That was all that we could take photos of in The Shining. So that was kind of interesting. The Unmasking the Horror has definitely evolved from what it used to be. When we first started going to this event, we would do Unmasking the Horror, take pictures in all the houses, whatever you wanted to. And then last year, they cut it off. They said no photos in the intellectual properties. And then this year, it's kind of augmented, where it's like you can take photos in specific rooms, even in the IPs and non-IPs, the original properties. Kind of made it not as good. Like, we kind of want to go to take the photos. It's still, we kind of want to go to take the photos. It's still good to go and see like all of the behind the scenes stuff, and it's neat to walk through the houses with the lights on, but you kind of want to be able to take the photos because you're moving a little bit quick and you want to be able to look at those photos later and be like, oh, what was in that like little cubby hole? What was in that shelf? What was this? What was that? And so, I don't know, it kind of stinks that, like for instance in The Shining, we could only take photos of the front entrance, the facade of the hedge maze, and that bathroom. That was it. And that kind of stinks because I'd like to be able to see a little bit more and kind of investigate the photos a little bit more, but we couldn't. So, still fun. Still had a good time. Still really enjoyed the Unmasking the Horror tour, but I wish I could just take more photos. So, with that being said, we are off, and I will see you guys tomorrow. And now it's time to pay the price.